You're watching State of Texas in Depth on KXAN News.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us for State of Texas in Depth. I'm Josh Hinkle. The big legislative news over the week here in Austin came with a cold front threatening voter turnout in a key House race.
We started campaigning when it was over 100 degrees.
It's a nice day, and we'll joke about that.
It certainly was a cold day to campaign in Austin, but Tuesday was the last chance these candidates had to grab voters' attention. Democrat Celia Israel bested Republican Mike Vandewally in a runoff for a vacant Texas House seat in northeast Travis County. House District 50 is a longtime Democratic district, most recently held by Mark Strama, who left the post last year to head up Google Fiber. For a while, the results were up in the air as a fifth of the polling locations for this House district closed with bad weather.
No way. I'm not tired. I'm ready to hit it. I feed off of the energy that I feel from people who appreciate the fact that we knocked on their door and asked for their support.
Luckily, the county did extend voting times by an hour to get more voters in. Now, Israel is looking ahead to the November election. She is unopposed in next month's primary, giving her an edge as she hopes to keep the seat for the next 2 years. Next month's primary election is just over a month away. Candidates will be campaigning hard ahead of March 4th for sure. Perhaps the most watched race statewide is the one for Texas Lieutenant Governor. A vicious competition on the GOP side between Ag Commissioner Todd Staples, current Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst, Land Commissioner Jerry Patterson, and perhaps the state's most conservative senator, Houston's Dan Patrick. The winner in that race will face the Democratic nominee, San Antonio Senator Leticia Vandepute. Each week ahead of the primary, we will profile one of those candidates during our Sunday morning coverage. This week, we take an in-depth look at Todd Staples. The Republican has served in both chambers of the state legislature from 1995 to 2007. One of his most noteworthy moves as a lawmaker was when he sponsored a constitutional amendment to recognize marriage in Texas as between a man and a woman. Now, as the Commissioner of Agriculture, he has made border security, water conservation, and wildfire response some of his top priorities. Nearly 2 years ago, I took a trip with him to far west Texas to survey wildfire damage near Fort Davis.
The first fact-finding mission for the Texas Wildfire Prevention Task Force took us nearly 500 miles west.
The Fort Davis area has been one of the hardest hit areas.
The team's headed up by Ag Commissioner Todd Staples.
Look at the damage that they had last year.
From the air, you could see terrain struggling to recover after nearly 315,000 acres burned last spring.
Well, there's no substitute for being on the ground.
Soon we were on the road.
See, the fire came right across this stretch.
Surveying where the wildfire did its worst.
Those fences look pretty new.
Yeah, they are. There wasn't a fence left between Marfa and Fort Davis.
Really? Because it did take them all out.
Yes, sir.
At our first stop, ranchers recounted their losses.
All of these electrical poles are new as far as you can see, and the fence as well, all the way to Fort Davis, both sides of the highway.
Wiley Dabbs said the ranch he managed lost 100 head of cattle.
And they cut the fence to let the cattle get on the highway. The fire jumped the highway so fast that there wasn't a whole lot they could do.
Nobody was really prepared for that kind of fire. Then once we run out of electricity, the substation burnt down, so we didn't have any water to fight fire with and whatnot.
23 homes, including one on Dabbs Ranch, destroyed. Wildlife once flourishing, now gone. Vegetation is returning slowly, but still scarce on the hilltops.
Some of the hot, intense areas, the grass and forage is just not rebuilding like it was.
Only time will tell what happens from now.
It's 21 miles from where our plane landed in Marfa to right here in Fort Davis. The Rock House fire was one of the biggest in Texas last year. It took only an hour for it to make it that far, and it burned for 30 days after.
Todd Staples, who's the Commissioner of Texas Department of Agriculture.
More stories at the courthouse in Fort Davis.
By no means are we out of the danger zone.
As local leaders and more ranchers talked about their own firefighting efforts.
Continue fighting and try to save forage.
Hoping to help Staples and the state understand what happened.
By the time I got through with the fire guard,
to make sure their loss doesn't happen again.
They've got that passion to continue to carve out a life and livelihood out of the wide open spaces.
Coming up, my one-on-one interview with Commissioner Staples. We talk about the campaign push, his push for more border security, and how he says he would have handled last session's now infamous abortion filibuster in the Senate. Straight ahead on State of Texas in Depth.